I would define being religious as someone who puts religion first and tries to practice it and follow its guidelines as best as they could. I practice my religion on a day-to-day basis by praying 5 times a day, reading Quran, and in my daily life, for example, if I saw my neighbor and I smiled or greeted, then that would be practicing my religion.
So this is a really complicated question to ask any Jew because their religious experience is a makeup of diasporic geographical locations, linguistic, cultural, genetic, historical, and religious practices. So I'm a Reform practicing Jew. I had a B'nai Mitzvah. I attend temple often. My family only celebrates Jewish holidays. But I think for me, religion is a tool to navigate the world and to understand the world and to create both questions and answers for the way that people act and the way that people believe things and the way that I act and believe things. And as a secular person, as a secular Jew, it's not necessarily as entirely religious as it can be intellectual and social and academic, which are things that for me are just as religious as prayer. So I think that I practice religion not only through attending temple and reciting prayers, but through debate and social experiences and being around other Jewish people and being able to discuss things, and social action. Religion for me is a really immersive experience.
I define being religious as believing in something bigger than yourself, like a greater power, greater faith, whether that you just believe it's there or you believe that it'll protect you or help you. I think that's what being religious is. Doesn't matter if you pray 6 times a day or you never pray at all. That's what I think being religious is.
But I think the short answer to the question is the history of the Jewish people is a tribe of indigenous people in Israel that packed up their physical features and their language and their culture and their food and their religion into a suitcase and carried it with them. And as they were expelled from country and killed from countries and spread across the globe, they left little pieces of their Judaism and they picked up little pieces of their Judaism and they assimilated and nestled and were kicked out again. And I think that's the history of the Jewish people, is this ever-evolving, ever-traveling, ever-restless tribe. And a tribe that's shaped by trauma and fear, and a tribe that's shaped by art and intellect. And that may not be the Wikipedia page that comes up, but to me, that's the history of the Jewish people.
My favorite tradition that I like to do or celebrate is Ramadan. I love the month of Ramadan. It's an amazing time of repenting, of just feeling closer to God, and we're able to fast for 30 days from sunrise to sunset, and it's a time to come together with our community. At night, we come and we go to our mosque and we all pray Taraweeh prayer together, and it's just like an amazing, happy time. You're able to really reconnect with God. You're able to read the Quran more, just feel more spiritually connected, and that has to be my favorite holiday. And after that follows Eid, which is also my favorite holiday.
I would probably say my religion's most prominent in terms of my values. I think Islam really values peace and generosity, and I try to live my life with those values as well. I try to be generous, always try to keep peace. I think those are very important values to live by. I think it's least prominent in my life in terms of my schooling. I don't have a lot of Muslim friends at my school or Muslims in general that attend my school.
Religion in my life is probably most prominent either with my family, one, because my parents are more religious than I am, value it differently than I do, and secondly, I go to Jewish sleepaway camp for about a month every year, and even though it's such a short period of my year, it consumes my whole life, and my closest friends are from there. So although we're none of us are very religious, I guess religion by association, and least prominent probably my day-to-day. I don't wake up every morning and pray or do anything.
So I think a pretty well-known one is that Muslims are terrorists and a hateful religion. And I think it's hard because you know your Muslim community, you know your Muslim brothers and sisters, and they're not hateful. Your religion preaches peace, and love. And so it's hard to see these specific groups completely changing the way your religion's viewed. I think it's also important to remember that every religion has hate groups and terrorists, but we shouldn't be defining or looking at a specific religion based off of those terrorist groups.
There's a common association with like upper middle class Jews, which is true a lot of the time, but sometimes just the people believing that like, oh, all the Jewish girls are like so bratty and they have money, they can get whatever they want. Jap is like Jewish American princess, that's what it's referred to quite often. So that's one misconception, and that affects me because like often I'll be afraid to tell someone my religion just because I don't want them to make fun of me. People's ignorance towards religious minorities and things that they don't know about often lead to discomfort on the side of the minority. And it's also really hard because people hear like Jew and they don't want to listen anymore. So like I think it's really important to remember that like people of all different races and religions and backgrounds and ethnicities and skin colors and philosophical beliefs have been being repressed forever. And don't judge a book by its cover. Don't make assumptions about people based off their religion, based off their looks, based off anything, because that's ignorant and you're making a fool of yourself. And that's why everybody should watch this beautiful video and this whole entire series that McKenna is doing, because she's a genius.
I think we see a lot of religious intolerance. When our president first came into office in 2016, there was a very well-known ban called the Muslim ban, which is an example of religious intolerance. I think also in the media, Muslims are portrayed as terrorists and super violent, and I think that adds to the misconception that the religion itself is violent and it's a terrorist, hateful religion. I think even in my day-to-day life, I'm always hearing kids at school making jokes about Islam and just things like that.
I see religious intolerance manifest on a global scale in abundance of ways, especially with Islamophobia heightening in Europe and many European countries. My religion of Islam is seen as extreme and as a terrorist group, while we practice the epitome of peace. And in many European countries, many Muslim women and men are being attacked solely for being Muslim, and also in many other European countries, they have banned the use of wearing the hijab and of even wearing the veil in public.
In my day-to-day life, as I said before, the jokes, it's all fine, and then it gets really close to home, and then you're like, oh my gosh, am I gonna get is someone not gonna be my friend? Is someone gonna hurt me? Is someone gonna make a post against me? Those are all really minor level things, but they kind of all build itself up to there's always a fear of oh, is there gonna be a Holocaust, which is kind of irrational, but it happened once, it could happen again type of situation. And in the media and entertainment, yeah, it's just a lot of stereotypical Judaism, which I think it's really important to recognize in modern Judaism, in Reform Judaism and things like that, oh, maybe as a teen, I do Shabbat with my family every Friday night, and then I go hang out with my friends and maybe go to a party or something, but me doing Shabbat with my family isn't inhibiting me from anything. And in the media, it kind of portrays it oh, we're gonna be super strict and I have to go to temple, blah, blah, blah. So more diversity. Just being Jewish is an extension of my identity. It's not my whole identity.
I think the most effective way is through education. And by education, I mean listening and talking to the other side. Even though it may seem very uncomfortable, I think if we keep avoiding it, it will just get worse and worse.
And so the most important thing is take it seriously. And then the follow-up to that is understand it and contextualize it and understand its nuance and understand that QAnon conspiracy theories are just as dangerous as Pittsburgh shootings. And understand that the way that a Jewish person faces anti-Semitism is different than the way a Muslim person faces Islamophobia. Understanding nuance, contextualizing it, contextualizing the psychological and historical and cultural reasons that brought us to this point is the best way that we can, in an immersive and full way, target these forms of hatred. The most important thing I've ever done as a Jewish person is sat down with my Muslim friends and talked about the hard things for a really long time, for hours, and understood more than anything else that there is duality of experience, that the things that have led me to form opinions about Israel are different than the things that have led my friends to form opinions about Israel. And that they're based on history and trauma and experience, and neither one is wrong. People experience different things. We're built in a world, in a country, in our own little systems that treat people differently, that produce people differently, that give people different opportunities and experiences. And if we can't acknowledge that, we don't understand where people's differences come from, and where their opinions come from, and where their history comes from. And I think that's one of the most dangerous things, and I think it's so important that we can look at people around us and understand that there are different things that brought them to the place that they are.
I think our identities are our differences. And even though it may seem like differences can cause conflicts, I believe that if we work with our differences, we can create beautiful things.